Across the fence, manure, water quality, and new regulations. We'll find out the latest from state agriculture officials and what they've learned in meetings with Vermont farmers. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. A lot has changed since farmers put their fields to bed in the fall. Vermont's Clean Water Act is now law, and that means farmers must follow a new set of required agricultural practices, or RAPs. The RAPs set standards for soil conservation, nutrient management, and the protection of natural resources. The first agricultural businesses to feel the effects of the RAPs are custom applicators. These are the farmers and trucking companies who contract to spread manure. Across the Fence's Keith Silva tells us more.
Unless you're a farmer, you're probably unfamiliar with the job of custom applicators. But if you live in Vermont, there's little doubt you've seen, heard, and smelled the work they do.
Once a farmer removes a crop from the field, they hire us to come in and spread the manure on either a fresh cut grass field, or we do spread on crops before they get planted.
Due to the specialization of their work, custom applicators have become as integral to a farm business as a veterinarian.
This is what we recommend you to do. Well, now we actually have a written plan that says...
Nate Severy is an agronomy outreach specialist with the University of Vermont Extension.
Custom applicators are very important to Vermont and the agricultural community. A lot of farms, dairy farms nowadays, they hire out this service. It can be very time consuming and it's very capital intensive to buy this spreading equipment. Many farms actually hire in these guys to do this work for them.
There's an annual ban on spreading manure in Vermont, which begins on December 15th and ends on April 1st.
Should be fun getting that booster pump across that.
Which makes March the calm before the storm for Matthew Severy and his son Eric.
So me and my father own Matthews Trucking LLC in Cornwall, Vermont. We do custom manure spreading in Vermont, primarily Addison County. We service roughly 30 farmers in the county. We spread 170 million gallons of manure a year.
And how many acres?
I would say 40,000 acres, roughly.
The Severys are one of the largest custom applicators in Addison County, a county that ranks near or at the top when it comes to Vermont agriculture. In the last 5 years, the Severys have put over $1 million into their business. They've invested in the latest technology like dragline spreaders and injection manure systems. The way they see it, there's money in manure.
Ever since we had our drag hose and the injection, our business has kept going up and up because the farmers see it. They're by injecting, they're saving money by not tilling their fields, and they're getting better use out of the manure for fertilizer, so they're growing better crops with less inputs.
Technology is changing the Severys business, and so are the rules governing how they do their job. Act 64, Vermont's Clean Water Act, goes into effect this year. The legislation is wide-ranging and covers many topics. What's got the attention of farmers and custom applicators is the required agricultural practices, or RAPs, concerning nutrient management. Custom applicators must now go through a certification process. There's a record-keeping mandate, and liability and enforcement provisions. Suffice to say, the agricultural community has questions.
But when you get to a point where it goes over and gets into water, that's where you're going to have a problem. And that's called...
Over 100 farmers and ag-related business owners were in attendance at 3 workshops held in February and March. The workshops were co-hosted by the Vermont Agency of Agriculture and UVM Extension.
By having these trainings, if we can educate them about the RAPs and the requirements in them about, buffers, trying to stay away from streams and ditches, agronomic rates for spreading manure, how to keep proper records, then having them know that information will go a long ways towards helping improve water quality.
My first impression was, what's someone from the state trying to tell me how to do my job? But after you look at it, that's not how it was, not the atmosphere that they put it in. It's teaching us good practices. A lot of it's stuff we already know, and us custom applicators as a whole across the state have been doing and are doing a good job. It's just a reassurance on exactly what we need to be doing and how to properly do it.
The farmer has to stay 50 feet away, so that combined there's 100, right?
We have to keep a record in our office for 5 years on where we spread the manure, what crop was growing, what the nutrient management plan called for, what we actually spread for, the weather the day before, the day of, and the day after. If there does become a problem, the state can find out what's happening. I think 5 years is a little excessive, but on some of our larger farms that have had nutrient management plans for years, we've already been keeping the records for the farmer, working with the nutrient management planners. It's really not that big of a change.
Left unsaid, these new laws are designed to protect the environment and serve both private and public interests.
It's important to go above and beyond just giving them a piece of paper that says what the rules and regulations are, and really have a forum available for them to really have dialogue with the Agency of Agriculture, with us, so that we can all really understand what that paper means and what that document means, and try and figure out what are the limitations for these custom applicators, and what difficulties might they have, and how can we problem solve to try and resolve those issues.
I'm hoping we can all get along and make it work together, and hopefully these first couple months or first year, there's some open dialogue between the farmers, custom applicators, and Agency of Agriculture. We're going to have to come together and make these decisions so we're doing the right thing, one for the lake and two by the law.
Certification for custom applicators will occur at the end of the year. In the meantime, farmers and officials will have a chance to see how well this law applies. In Cornwall, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
Well, thanks, Keith. Joining me now are two guests from the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets. I want to welcome Laura DiPietro and Ryan Patch. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Laura, what do we know about the number of custom applicators in Vermont?
Well, we've done 3 trainings at this point. We have a 4th one coming up on Friday, which is a webinar for those that may have missed the first ones. But 80 folks showed up to get certified in the state of Vermont throughout the whole state.
That sounds like a pretty good number.
It was more than I had expected, for sure.
And so in light of this new law, what should farmers be considering as they prepare their fields this spring?
Yeah, great question. RAPs are pretty comprehensive, talking about all parts of farmers management. But some of the 5 key areas that we're chatting with farmers about, making sure they're aware to have for their spring checklist is focusing on buffers, 25-foot vegetative buffers on surface water, 10 feet on ditches, making sure they follow manure spreading setbacks in those areas. Also, as we work towards nutrient management planning over the next couple of years, making sure to take soil samples of your fields where you apply nutrients, and then also keep records of nutrients that are applied to the field, whether manure or fertilizer or compost.
Now, could farmers see enforcement this year?
This year we're really focused on education. There are some farms that have been regulated at this level for many more years than some of the smaller farms, and it all depends. But again, an egregious situation is a very different situation than education and outreach to make sure they understand the regulations as they do the farming.
And so what have you heard from farmers and custom applicators in the workshops that you've been holding?
I think they've been really engaged. I've been really impressed. Many of them are, at this point, I think, ready. They've gone through this education. Some of them I've seen multiple times. We also did, the state contracted with UVM Extension to do the classes and help with the education, help explain what nutrient management is to all of these folks. And many of them, so we did the classes for the certifiers, and then we did classes for their employees. Because someone who owns a business is required to make sure that their employees are also trained. And so we held those classes so that we could give that opportunity through the state and UVM combination effort. And many people were at both of those trainings. So, sometimes it takes multiple times to hear something and really learn it. I think they've definitely engaged and have taken that on.
Well, and too, in the piece that we saw that Keith did, it sounds like it was a pretty good environment as far as, not heavy-handed and these are the rules now. It was very much a cooperative experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think Matt Severy is absolutely right. We're not going to come in and tell them how to run their business. We're going to make sure that they understand what the requirements are for the RAPs for water quality, and beyond that, work with them so that we can learn more, and then they can learn more as needed.
Definitely engaged in a dialogue. We need feedback as they work to implement these rules on what works and what doesn't. And I think another thing we've heard is a lot of parts of the REPs, I'm already doing all this. I already have spreading setbacks and my buffers in place as well. So.
But part of this too is documenting that and keeping track of that.
Yeah, and for many people that might be their biggest challenge. Everyone has record-keeping systems that are different, and just being consistent with it is really going to be the challenge. But in time, we're providing resources through the state and through UVM to give opportunity to say, here's an example of how you could do it. But hopefully we'll be able to have more time in the field to work with people to help them continue that effort.
And so outside of dairy, how do the RAPs impact like vegetable farmers or even horse staples?
Yeah, great question. Act 64 said, RAPs need to make sure they apply to all farming operations in the state, and the AAPs before the RAPs, of course, apply to all farm sectors and types as well. So the RAPs specifically have requirements for all livestock operations, whether it's a dairy cow, horses, sheep and goats, beef cows, and vegetable farmers as well, those growing crops, whether it's vegetables, corn, soybeans, hay. And some of the ways horse owners, for example, are going to want to be aware of, some of the things they're going to want to be aware of in the RAPs is manure stacking, manure spreading setbacks, and some of the pasture recommendations to make sure streams aren't impacted. And vegetable growers are really interested in some of the erosion requirements in there, making sure they don't have excessive erosion. And all throughout the rulemaking process, and as we work to implement the rules, we've had really great engagement from many farmers in those sectors, as well as the organizations that support them, like the Vermont Veggie Berry Growers Association, Vermont Horse Council, and Extension, of course, has been really engaged in getting us some feedback on how the RAPs could affect their operations, what sort of support they need.
How small does a farm have to be to not be affected by this law?
Actually, it doesn't matter. If you are impacting water quality and you have livestock, for instance, you will be able to be covered under these regulations for water quality impacts. If you have livestock, and there's varying numbers for different sizes of livestock, but for instance, fewer than 5 cows, then you could have the local zoning have regulations on how you're able to manage a property, assuming you don't have a water quality issue. We would stay out of it, but if there is a water quality issue, the state can intervene.
What should the public expect from these new rules?
Well, I hope they see more buffers. Roadside ditches, agricultural ditches were never in previous. The AAPs required to have ditches or buffers on their ditches, so it's 10 feet now. So there's a big change just driving on the roadside that we should see in some places. And 25 feet for all farms. The previous requirements were only for the bigger farms, and now it's all farms. And so you should see 25-foot surface water buffers and 10-foot ditch buffers. So that should be pretty significant. And the other place is in floodplains, much more cover cropping as a protection over the winter in those areas, and less manure application during the shoulder seasons or the non-growing season.
But it sounds like, at least from the piece that we saw, that farmers are doing more of these things because it makes more business sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways that some of the management recommendations in the RAPs definitely work to improve a farmer's bottom line when we start thinking about how cover cropping improves soil health, which can help reduce the number of inputs a farm may need to purchase. We get the water quality benefits from the cover cropping, as well as the economic benefits of a more resilient crop that can better withstand drought and flood, and also save money because you don't have to buy as much fertilizer because you get some free nitrogen.
Terrific. Well, for more information about the required agricultural practices, you can visit the agency's website. It's agriculture.vermont.gov, and the website has fact sheets and contact information. You can also download a copy of the RAP wraps. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
That's our program for today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.